All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. The journey to the top continues. Hi-Fi Summit Day 2. We are back again with David Dunn, and this time we are talking NAD. What is up, gentlemen? How's everything going?
How's it going? Long haven't talked to you guys in at least 20
I know
minutes.
it's been like a year.
It's actually been lunch. That was it. Little snack.
Yeah, quick snack and back into the fire. So
That's right, man. Glad to have you back.
glad to be here. So except a different topic today, or at least for this hour anyway.
Yeah.
We're moving from PSB to NAD and our, I'll say brand new T778, or at least our latest AVR in the lineup. It's got a lot of cool tricks up its sleeve. So
I like it. It
Yeah.
looks slick, man. Looks slick.
And the comments are already flying in, so that's good stuff too. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's NAD has been on, I'll call it a similar path with its AV receivers, and it's I think it's one of the coolest things in a lot of consumer electronics. And the highlight of the receiver is that all the technologies in the back, and is one of the first questions that popped in, are all they're modules. It's an upgradable receiver. So like when I started with the company 12 years ago, they had just started doing it, but it actually means we have 12-year-old AVRs that can do Atmos, 4K, direct room correction, and BlueOS high-res streaming.
That's so crazy.
In a 12-year-old AVR by changing some cards. Like that is, I think, a killer feature.
It's like a PC, right?
Yeah.
Just
Swap it out.
Update some RAM.
Yeah,
Video.
It's really wild. Like here, I'll throw this guy up here. Let's see. Let me just change my window here and show you guys this guy.
Let's see. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. So those are basically the 4 card bays in the back, and
Right.
it's basically just a couple of screws. I mean, on the audio card, there's a ground cable there as well, but that's 4 cards in the back. That's they'll call it the business end of the 778. But so the top one here is blank. The one labeled MDC, modular design construction. The HDMI, and then the one off to the other side is the audio card, analog audio, and then the below is the one with all the DSP and stuff on it for that. So it's pretty wild to be able to say that your AVR is 12 years old and you can make it essentially the same as the latest and greatest just by swapping out a couple of cards. So
Now,
it's
David,
a
I'm
killer
assuming,
feature.
do they need to send that back in to get it, to swap out those modules, or is that something the consumer
No,
can do?
that's the I say if it would say depends on the expertise of the consumer. We usually have them at least send it to a service center if they're
Okay.
I'll call it a little nervous.
Sure.
But
But
realistically,
this is completely doable.
yeah, like say
Awesome.
like if you've got somebody, like I've talked to lots of people in the firm, like, well, I built my old PC from scratch. Like, great,
Sure.
you can do it. Like, no problem.
Right.
As long as don't run across the carpet and build up a great big static charge before you
Sure.
decide to dive in, you're probably safe. So it is definitely doable by a consumer, but it depends on
cool.
your level of expertise. But yeah,
Sure.
service center. I mean, a dealer, we have lots of dealers that can do it for you. So you could actually bring it back to the let's say your local dealer, and they can do it for you on the spot as well. So it's pretty wild to be able to bring that on board to older products. And I mean, because even from our perspective, building a new AV receiver, well, the amplifiers
takes a
are
lot.
amplifiers. Like there's no reason to throw in a perfectly good amplifier because of the
HDMI changes, right?
Well, exactly. And that's what I was just going to say. Like the first AV receiver, that we had with HDMI didn't even do the audio on HDMI. Like that's how old the spec was, going back, whatever, 12, 13 years. Well, that same piece, can be upgraded to all the latest features. And HDMI has always been, I'll call it the bane of a lot of people's existence, and the never-ending changes and that hunt for more and more stuff. So that is, to me, is one of the coolest features of the receiver in itself, or all of our receivers. It's very, very impressive. And then obviously the business, the front end, the part that everybody sees, that touchscreen, is the other thing that people absolutely love, and I definitely love it with too.
That looked great for sure. I got a question here from Snoots, who can't be in this, and he says that I expect HDMI 2.1 modules to come to the T778.
Yep.
What about the T758 V3?
Yeah, they're because they're all cards. Like once let's say, I mean, because we're not, we'll call it a giant electronics company that makes, jet skis and snowmobiles and lawnmowers and everything else.
I want to consider that. That sounds cool.
Hey, I used to have a jet ski. I'd love to have another one.
NAD jet skis.
So, I mean, we're never going to be the first company out of the gate with the latest and greatest chipset. So we're always, I'll say, a little bit behind. But yeah, we will definitely make that card when.
Nice.
I mean, the spec too, from my understanding, is I'll call it a little bit. I'll call it not quite baked yet.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a bit of unknown there. So I will, I would love to see it, and it'll happen on our stuff,
Right.
and and because the cards are, I'll call it universal. That means the customer with that, now probably, let's call it 4-year-old AV receiver, will be able to do 2.1 in a 14-year-old AVR. So
Craziness. Also, is there a difference between the T758 V3 and the V3i on the website?
AirPlay.
Oh,
So
okay.
the
That's
I
it.
adds the AirPlay chip to the video card, but other than that, it's the same thing.
Identical.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, that was the change in the video card. We added AirPlay to all the new AV receivers and cards. So that's the only difference between the V3 and the V3i. So
Very
I
cool.
think it's pretty impressive that you're adding the modularity in an AV receiver when most companies that add that feature, that's in your dedicated processors, which
yeah.
typically are a lot more expensive.
Yep.
So definitely very cool.
Yeah. I mean, we have a Master Series preamp processor that has the same cards as well. I mean, we developed it a while ago, and we even have, we have two different flavors of that modular design construction. There's the AV side, that are call it our bigger cards, but on the 2-channel side. So on the AV side, it's about future proofing and, I'll call it protecting your investment and that. On the 2-channel side, it's about adding features. So we have smaller cards for our 2-channel products. So you can add like 3-in, 1-out 4K HDMI switching in a 2-channel integrated amp. So that, I only have 2 speakers in my living room, but I need to do video switching. I don't want to buy an AVR and add that complexity to my system. So you can do that. Or the other one is our BlueOS cards, or our high resolution streaming card. You can take our 2-channel products and then add inputs and features to it. Whereas on the AV side, it's about protecting your investment and stretching the life of that AV product for as long as we can. So
now you got me eyeballing the M17, man. What's going on?
there you go. It's a
It looks
fantastic
gorgeous.
piece.
It looks gorgeous. I think that's one thing too that NAD brings to the table is just that style and refinement and just the class. Apart from just sound quality and performance.
Yeah, it's something we've always had. We'll call it the keep it simple philosophy. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, especially in an AV product, because there are so many features and so many chipsets and licenses for this and licenses for that and all that, like the cost adds up fairly quickly. And every, I'll call it like button and blinking light on the front and switch and knob and everything, it adds to the cost of the product. So we've always, tried to be, we'll call it, judicious in what we put in. And even from a feature standpoint, there's been, I don't know, we'll call it dozens and dozens of different surround sound formats that have come and gone over the years. Some of them, there's never really been any real content to go with them. So we typically don't jump on the latest bandwagon of this, that, of the other thing, unless it adds something to the sound quality and a real benefit, to the end user who gets it. Giving you a surround sound format that we had to pay a license for that doesn't have content doesn't help you. It just adds to the cost. At the end of the day, the consumer pays for it, whether they use it or not.
True.
So, we try and be judicious in what we add into the product, and it needs to have a some kind of benefit, sonically or functionality wise, that we hope everybody appreciates versus, they'll call it like the eat it Moe's flashing lights on the front of the receiver all the time, that really don't do anything from the performance standpoint. So
we're getting a few questions here about Dirac, live bass, and independent control for 3 or 4 subs, whether that's in the plans.
Yeah, it's in the plans. It's actually going to show up in the 2-channel products first. And that's, I'll call it a bit of the good and the bad with the modular design, because the way the card is developed and the way it ties in through the analog outs. The subwoofers are basically, the two sub outs are tied together, so there's no way to give you independent bass control on this generation of AV products. Whereas the 2-channel products, it was actually done because they were in development later. We separated them all out, so you'll actually see them in the M33, the M10, and the 658 first. Before they show up in the AV products, because it's a little bit of a more difficult change to make. So on there, but yeah, I mean, Dirac is the other, I call it, great feature. I mean, again, that's something that adds I call it a cost to the unit, but it's a massive benefit. I often say to people, it's like, if you only do one demo, do the Dirac on-off demo. It is seriously impressive. The last part of the chain. In anybody's audio system, it doesn't matter how much you spend on speakers and electronics and everything else, and you stick it in a terrible room, it'll sound terrible.
Yeah.
So it's a significant improvement, and there has been and there are other room correction software systems out there, but there's only, I'll call it, 1 or 2 other ones that correct for impulse or timing and phase problems. All the other ones are basically just giant EQs. And that's kind of all that they do. Whereas Dirac, because of that timing and phase correction, is super impressive, and it gives you a ton of flexibility as well. So in the AV products, you actually have 3 different slots you can store different Dirac settings in. So if you wanted let's call it like extra sub for, let's say, gaming, because the kids are doing Xbox or PlayStation or something. So you can have a set for that. Or the one that I like to promote is, in most living spaces, the perfect listening position is not that equilateral triangle between the left and right speaker. You're off to the left or off to the right, or, maybe it could be, but the comfy part on the couch is in the nice L corner where I can put my feet up. You can make the perfect stereo position, 6 feet to the left of one speaker, and 8 feet to the right of the other, or completely off axis for what would be the normal, call it perfect spot. And that's one of the beautiful things about Dirac, outside of the out and out impressive correction stuff that it does. So that's I'll call it a killer benefit, because most people don't have a dedicated theater room, or a dedicated listening room, where everything is the perfect thing, and they may not spend or will not spend, $10,000-$20,000 on room correction treatments and stuff like that, because it's a family room that the whole family has to share. So Dirac can get rid of all of that, and it's built right into the receiver as well. So
yeah, I'm loving this right here, that it actually states full disclosure power, all channels driven simultaneously, full bandwidth, 9x85. Yeah, you won't see that on majority of AV receivers. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, I'll call it, a lot of the, I'll call it, power numbers. I mean, power sells products. Is that really kind of the the name of the game? And so it used to be, you'd see, I'll call it, completely impossible power numbers, that would be published by a manufacturer. And a number of years ago, the Federal Trade Commission in the States set up some rules that said, you must measure power this way. And actually NAD went and said, that's not realistic, and actually fought against the kind of the numbers and the system that they gave. Because we believe, especially in an AV product, like nobody, the spec is you need to drive one channel, with a 1 kilohertz sine wave. And that's how you get your power number. Well, nobody buys a 12 channel or 9 channel or 7 channel AV receiver and hooks up a center channel. And that's it. Like, they're not realistic numbers. So, and we've always maintained, that full disclosure power where we'll publish the Federal Trade Commission number. So you can, if you're shopping by numbers and you're looking for a powerful, if you're looking for power, then that's great. I mean, having we'll call it 140 watts as this one is, Federal Trade Commission number.
Yeah, I see that it's right above, right
here.
Yeah,
exactly. So
FTC.
So both are published. I mean, very few people will ever get this thing loud enough to reach that kind of power output number anyway. But we give it to you, if that's what you're looking at, because people are, I'll call it, conditioned to look for that number. But yeah, we insist on giving you what it actually is with channel driven and 20 to 20. I mean, driving a 20 hertz, sine wave takes way more power than 20 kilohertz. Like a 1 kilohertz, that's basically the sound of a baby crying. It doesn't take a lot of energy to get 1K, and 20K even less energy out of an amplifier to put that out. The low frequency demand is where the demands on the power supply get made. So that's the hard number to get.
I only play 1 kilohertz pretty much most of the time anyway.
Yeah, it wakes you up in the morning. Yeah.
I think actually you said power sells AVRs, but I think also the room correction, how good the room correction is and the type that you guys are using.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say like, I'll call it online or shop by numbers. A lot of people will look at 2 or 3 different AVRs and like this one's 100 and this one's 120, this one's 160, the 160, all things being equal, the 161 must be better. But it's till you dig down and see what those numbers actually are. I've seen, spec sheets from manufacturers that say 165 watts. And then you look at the fine print, it's 1 channel driven and it's 10% distortion. Like it's a massive amount of distortion. Like
you don't want that.
Like your speakers are probably, toast by the time you do that. And that's,
and that's only on Sundays.
Yeah. With a tailwind. I mean, like, it's funny, like you look at let's say the car industry, and horsepower numbers or pickup trucks and their towing capacities. If, Ford and GM and those guys were measuring their towing capacity based on the same kind of numbers that some companies do their amplifiers, like you wouldn't be able to tow a bicycle with some of them. Yep. So it's unfortunate, but it's been that way for quite some time. It's really important to educate people to look a little deeper or realize that 140 watts is like volume wide open full smash, like it's concert level specifications. So
Steve Bonin has a good question here. What is NAD, hybrid digital amplifier technology?
Oh yeah, no, that is a good one. So the best way to think of it is, amplifier, you have class A amplifiers, which are your tube amps that basically we'll call it generate either power or heat at 100% all the time. So if you're pulling, let's call it 50 watts out of the wall and it's muted, you're sending up 50 watts in heat. Class A, B is a little more efficient. Class D is digital, or is not digital, sorry, that a lot of people think. They think, oh, D is digital, and it isn't. Class D is a switching power supply. So if there's no audio, basically the power supply isn't operating, we'll say. And it switches during the audio. So our hybrid digital technology is, I'll call it, it's an analog amplifier, but with a push-pull power supply in it. So we can get great efficiency, way less heat. We can actually get smaller components out of the same, we'll call it, same power. So let's call it a 100 watt amplifier. The power supply and the heat generates a fraction of the size that it would have been with our class A, B designs that we used to do in the past. And we moved to that, not, let's say, to be necessarily to, be green and follow a trend, but it actually sounds better. The biggest benefit to that hybrid digital technology is that the amplifier is load invariant. And we talked briefly on the PSB class about, when the impedance of a speaker changes, the amplifier is connected to it and the amplifier responds to that. Let's say it's a big dip and the speaker drops to 2 ohms. The amplifier's response changes in reaction to that. With this hybrid digital technology, the amplifier is load invariant, so it doesn't care what the speaker does. It's back in the days of system matching, you picked amplifier A with speaker B. Oh, well, you can't use speaker C because they don't play nice together. Well, it was because the impedance curve of the speaker didn't agree with the way the amplifier would respond. So that was the magic to system matching. Oh, if you're going to buy these speakers, you want to buy this or this or this amplifier, or, oh, you own that amp, you can't hook these speakers up to it. They won't sound very good. Well, that's kind of gone with this hybrid digital technology in that, the amplifier doesn't care what the speaker is doing. It maintains a perfectly flat response all the time. It's remarkable what can be done with it. And again, and drawing less power out of the wall and being more efficient, running cooler. I mean, heat is the death of anything electronic. At the end of the day, if it's if it runs hot all the time, it doesn't last as long. You dry things out. So that it adds to it as well. So the best way to think of hybrid digital amplifier technology, it's an analog amplifier with a push-pull power supply. Now, most of our integrateds and all that have DACs and everything in them as well, whereas where the digital part comes into it is that, there's very few analog sources left in the world that people are using, save turntables, probably about the only one. So, you need to have optical and coax inputs and everything else in there as well. So that's I'll call it hybrid digital we'll call it in a nutshell. So without getting too propeller heady on it. So yeah.
Just to be 100% sure, is the T778 getting an HDMI 2.1 card?
Yeah. We will do, I'll call it updated cards when all that stuff. Let's say in due course, we will do cards for all of that stuff to bring it up to once the 2.1 spec is fully baked and there's material and everything else that takes advantage of it. We will do that, and it looks like it'll actually be the latest PlayStation and Xbox consoles that are the first to kind of take advantage of that stuff. So, we've gone away from, we'll call it Blu-ray and DVD and everything else, pushing where the format is up.
Right.
To game consoles and stuff like that. So
cool.
Yeah.
Question about the low sensitivity on pre-outs. I'm not sure. Let's see. I think this is the right. Let me bring up the spec sheet here again. All right. So preamplifier. Are these the maximum output level?
So that's input level.
Okay.
So because that's the line input. So
okay.
I don't know if that's actually the pre-out section or not. I don't see. Can't really see from that thing. I'd have to look into that. They'd have to have them if they email electronics.com. We'll give them the exact number. But we standard. We use standard. Industry specifications for RCA, and it's minus 10 dB out. So,
well, I would imagine since it has like what did I see there, like 5 or 6 trigger outputs?
Yep. So there'd be 1 trigger in and 3 out. So if you wanted to drop screens and stuff like that, or fire up projectors and all that, and again, we tend to be we'll call it pretty generous on that stuff, so that you can actually drop a screen with it. So we're usually 500 millivolts on a trigger out, and it basically that industry standard is from about 5 to 20 volts is kind of what you'd expect on an output. But it's really the current that's the kicker on that. Is if the current's really, really low, you can't actually drop a screen or a projector or close the drapes or things like that.
So it's for more than just an external power amp. It's for a whole lot.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you could do. And it was one of the reasons why, when I used to work for the CI company I used to work for, why we often chose NAD amplifiers, because we could drop a screen just going directly out of the NAD, where a lot of the other ones you actually had to go to a separate relay box to then drop the screen, because it didn't have enough current on the output to actually drop the screen or close the blinds or the projector or whatever. So
and CI, for those that don't know, or that's custom integration or custom integrator?
Yeah, custom install, custom install or integration, which this amplifier, it's my background, and it's a huge part of the industry now. So it comes with the rack ears in the box, so you don't have to buy anything separate. You literally, unscrew, the 4 screws on the side, attach the rack ears, and you just pop it in the rack, and away you go. Because
very good.
It's and again, so we're talking about features and benefits that add something to the consumer. A big giant touchscreen on the front of it may just look like I'll call it like a flashy toy, but it has real functionality in it. You can do the complete setup of the AVR speaker levels, distances, sizes, input selection, rename the inputs, set up the triggers, all from that touch screen in the front. So, in the case of, let's say, a basement theater where you've got a drop screen and a projector, you put all the gear maybe in a mechanical room, or you hide it in the closet. well, you can't see the projector for doing the setup. So then you need to either add some kind of IR repeater system or a control system. Well, now you don't have to. You can plunk yourself down in front of it, do all the configuration that way, and away you go. And quite frankly, it's a lot faster too, because with a remote, if you're going to rename your input from input 1 to be satellite box, you don't have to go up, down, left, right through the entire alphabet, God knows how many times, to get to the characters you want. You have a full-on keyboard from the front panel. You can just type it right in and be done with it. So it's much faster than the up, down, left, right, enter process with an IR remote. So there's some major benefits there as well, and it also looks pretty.
Yeah, no, it definitely looks really great.
It's like
Michael, I know you
man.
have to jump out real quick, right?
I do, man. I hate it.
No,
Handle.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be back.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's cool that you have the touch screen, right?
Yeah, and it's customizable too, so you can make it. So I mean, on our M10, we got a lot of oohs and ahs by having analog VU meters on the front of it, so you can actually do that.
Joe.
Yeah.
Can you do that on the T778? Or
Absolutely.
Yep.
Oh,
There you go.
that's
There
it.
you
I'm
go.
sold. I'd forgive you for not having a knob because it's all about the knob feel. But
we talked about that in early days. It's like, do you need to have a volume knob on it? We hemmed and hawed about leaving the volume knob off and either doing it through the touch screen or not. And we decided, you know what, we'll keep it in. So, but who knows? Maybe the next generation down the road there'll be no volume knob, because let's be honest, a lot of people don't interact with the front face of a product anymore. It's all through the app remote, or the remote or whatever. So.
Well, my kids love to. Is there a way to lock that so my 2-year-old and 4-year-old aren't messing
Just
with
start
Durac?
touching with it, and all of a sudden,
Like,
You want me? Are you asking me how do you lock your kids up or the volume knob?
No, I was just wondering if you could lock the screen.
The screen, there's not, but that's just a software thing. We could add that
Okay.
in. It's been asked, so I know it's in the. We always maintain a very
Back
long
burner.
to-do list. That we take from consumers and dealers and installers and reviewers and everything. So in the to-do list, that has come up a few times, is the ability to lock out the front panel entirely, so that people don't I'll call it accidentally go in and change things on it.
Yeah.
So.
We got a question from Alex here. He's saying Purify technology is in your latest products. Could you give a brief explanation on what this means for an end result?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Purify, so a little bit of background. So our last generation of Master Series products, M22, M27, things like that, used from a Dutch company called Hypex, was their hybrid digital N-Core technology. And they made basically two different types of modules. Ones that you could buy as a kit and basically build your own amplifier. But because NAD, I mean, we've been known for a very long time, and again, we have some great amplifier engineers. We approached them and we're interested in the technology because it's really got some great groundbreaking stuff in there. So the N-Core stuff, we made essentially our own version of from Hypex with our own secret sauce in there. Call it technologies we've had for a long time, like soft clipping and things like that. So Purify, the same gentleman, a gentleman by the name of Bruno Putzis, that worked for Hypex. So they started a company called Purify, and the new technology is called Engeltact, which basically it's all about self-clocking. So it takes that N-Core technology that was, I'll call it amazing, and steps it up even more. So it's a self-clocking, self-oscillating amplifier that still has the benefits of being load invariant and everything else, and delivering, I'll call it high power without, I'll call it having a massive box. I mean, they still generate heat, but nowhere near like you get out of a Class A or Class AB amplifier. So, and that's in our new M28, which is a replacement to the M27, the new M33 that's getting a ton of attention. Those were the first two out of the gate, and the latest one is a Classic Series 298 two-channel power amplifier that uses the same Purify technology. And you'll see that trickle down. I mean, it's we start at the Master Series level. That's where all the kind of groundbreaking technology comes in. Because it's a higher cost product, so it can bear some of the development costs, and then as that stuff happens, it trickles down to more and more product as time goes on. So.
And that's in the T778 or
the T778 is a hybrid digital, so it's similar to our 368, 388 amplifier platform. It's not the Purify Tech amplifier. So yeah, that I mean, it'll probably be a different generation of product for that, because that Purify stuff is brand new, whereas the 778 has been in development for a while now. So we didn't call it have a chance to. No, it was too much of a change too late in the game, and it would have increased the price too much to make it, we'll call it doable. So. We've already got our first order for an NAD jet ski, by the way. So
there it is. I'm excited. I actually have the T778 coming in for review. So I'm going to be able to play around with that and check it out, which is cool because I'm not, I'm used to using another company's AVR almost exclusively. So I haven't gotten a chance to play around with different room correction, and I'm kind of curious to see how Dirac. I don't know how you're supposed to say that.
Dirac is that's how they say it. So they're actually a company out of Sweden. It developed it, and it is. I mean, I've played around with different room correction systems in the past, and it is by far and away the best one I've heard. And I'll say I've done the demo for dealers, end users. I'll call it people that say, oh well, they don't have golden ears. I can't tell the difference. Like they're waiting for some super subtle change. It is not subtle. It's seriously impressive. It's a seriously impressive technology. And in a 2-channel setup, when you're only dealing with 2 speakers, it's obviously a little easier to get it right. Mm-hmm. But when you get into 8, 5, 7, 9 channels of amplification, getting all those speakers to work exactly the same is super impressive, and it's pretty transforming in what you hear from a theater experience. Because one example we did was actually, believe it or not, it was a garage that had I want to say a dozen speakers in it and 6 subwoofers and a huge rack of gear. And when you turn the volume up, I mean, it was obviously there was a lot of energy in the room, but it wasn't tight. And after the correction with Dirac, there was one spot where we placed the microphone. You felt like you were getting kicked in the chest because everything was targeted to that one spot. So it put so much more energy into the room. It's seriously impressive technology. And I would say that would be the first thing I would do if I were you, is that after you get it all set up, do the Dirac, listen to it with it off, and then turn it on and go back and forth with some stuff that puts some energy in the room.
Yeah.
And it has, what does it ship with? Which version of Dirac does it come with?
So it comes with the light version, which is for 500 hertz and below, which is where 99% of everybody's room problems exist, is in that sub 500 hertz, range. But for $99 US, then you can upgrade you go into the Dirac website, you can upgrade to the full 20 to 20 version, and then you get full editing over the curve. It's not, it's definitely less user friendly than some of the other ones where you plunk the microphone down, press a button, walk away, and you're pretty much done.
What is that? What is that guy? Ron Popeil, set it and forget it.
You set it and forget it. Yeah, yeah. It's a little more involved than that, but not super difficult. Like you can do it from a smartphone or a tablet, and it literally steps you through, like, move the mic here, move the mic there, do that, and at the end it'll spit out a response curve for you, and you can edit that response curve. So in the 20 to 20 version, if you had a speaker, let's say was you found it was really harsh in the high end, you could actually change it, revoice the speaker, so you can actually take some of that high end out of it. Or if it was dull in the high end, you could put some of that stuff back in. So it's a super impressive technology, and you can revoice speakers to the point of doing doing that room correction and play around with it, save it, change it. And with the NAD AVRs, you have 3 preset slots. So, you could do one that's completely ruler flat, one with a little more bottom end. On site, there's actually an NAD custom curve we developed with Paul Barton of PSB, so you can do the NAD custom curve, load that in, and if you, and you can edit it. So if you go, oh, I like it, but I want a little less bass or a little more bass, play around with it, save it as a different preset, flip between them until you find the one you really like. So it gives you a ton of control, and it is super impressive. It's super impressive.
There you go, Joe. You got to spend $100, bro.
Is it actually called the Paul Barton custom curve?
No, it's a NAD custom curve, but I mean, we weren't going to let 50 years of Paul Barton's research and knowledge go to waste. So he actually did the curve, but it's called the NAD custom curve. It's on the direct page on the NAD website. You can download that and load it in yourself. So it's a great way. I mean, because part of Paul's research and what we know, and we see this from other amplifiers as well, is that if the frequency response is completely ruler flat, like a mirror, it's not very exciting. People actually don't like it. So actually having a little more energy in the bass regions is what people actually find it, call it appealing and what they like. So the default Dirac curve, I want to say 2 or 3 dB up in the bottom end, and it's a flat curve. You'll call it left to right. The NAD curve has more of that energy in the bottom end and has we'll call it a bit of a hump in it, which is what Paul's research has shown that's what people like, and that's basically the way he designs speakers and the way he voices speakers. So there's that, and then if you get the full version, then at the high end you can basically revoice the speaker. If you found that you had a speaker that you thought was too bright or not bright enough, you can put energy back in to those places, and it's pretty amazing what you can see, because it'll show you what the room response was. You can edit it from left to right if you wanted to, if the left speaker and the right speaker weren't the same, from, I'll call it, outside of a placement issue. Like if one's stuck up against a window and the other one's in open air, obviously they're going to measure different. But if they're, equidistance from walls and they don't measure the same, you can actually correct them left to right. And it does that for every single speaker in the system. So in a multi-channel, home theater system, it's super impressive. It even corrects, on the impulse side, tweeter to woofer in each speaker. It will actually delay the response of the tweeter so that everything aligns up perfectly. So it's super sophisticated technology made reasonably easy to do. So
sounds pretty fancy to me.
It is. There's a lot of very serious math and science going on in the background, but fortunately, if you can swipe through an app, you can do it yourself. So they've made it easy to do. You don't need an engineering degree or a physics degree in acoustics to make it go. So
yeah, we were just talking about this on our show too. Like room correction is pretty much what's going to make your system sound the best. Especially in I'm in a living room situation where things aren't lined up. And like you just said, like one speaker is pretty much butted up against the window, and then the other one is, at the top of the stairwell. So there's, a bunch of open air and the banister there from the stairs. Yep. So it's totally different. And Joe, that's probably why it was measuring differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, and Dirac takes all those things into consideration. So it's the entire signal chain, front to end, including the room, all calculated out. So it's super impressive. I've never done a demo for somebody with the off-on demo on the same track where people haven't been suitably impressed and heard the difference. So where's this? It's so rad to see more manufacturers and customers accepting that ruler flat does not equal enjoyable. Yeah.
We were talking about the first time I heard Dirac was at CES 2019, and it was a 5.2 Dunn audio setup. It was audio control, pre-pro, and amplifier, and it sounded like we were listening to an Atmos movie. Yeah. Like it was really, really, and those hotel rooms that they set them up in aren't the best either.
Terrible.
So it was the newest Mission Impossible with the helicopter chase scene, and it was fantastic. Like I was totally stoked. I was like, man, I got to get me this Dirac.
Yeah, it's and I mean, most people can't have the perfect listening environment. They don't have a dedicated listening room or movie room, and all things you have to make, to have a home theater, let's say in a living room or a great room. It doesn't have to sound terrible. So one of the funnier systems I saw was somebody who had spent, I'll call it, a lot of money on some very high end, very esoteric gear, and speakers, and it was solid, like marble floors and drywall and windows everywhere. There wasn't even a carpet in the room. It sounded terrible. It's like because the room was the final part of the final part of the
equation,
puzzle in the equation. And yeah, something like I don't know if anything would have fixed that room. It was so bad because it was basically like a giant fish tank.
reflector. Yeah.
But it certainly would have gone a long way to making it better. And I've never found a room I'm trying to think how many years we've been using it and demoing it and working with them. A major significant difference from the smallest little, I'll call it shop demo rooms, to we actually did a ballroom that was 120 feet by 80 feet with 30-foot ceilings, that call it the attendees thought we actually had done something untowards to the receiver to make it sound so much better with the direct on and off. So we actually gave them the remote and said, here, show me where I changed the settings to make it sound either so bad or so good, because they thought we'd done something to alter the sound so much, but it was just that the room was so terrible. So
would you say for somebody who has a very nice pair of speakers in a treated room, do you find that they prefer to use a curtain and not even use anything above 500 hertz with direct?
It really, it's pretty room specific. I mean, if the room is I'll call it reasonably good, 500 hertz is all you really need to fix most of the room problems. Anything above that, you really are starting to revoice the speaker. And if you've got a good pair of well-designed speakers, that aren't either I'll call it screaming bright on the high end or super dull on the high end, you probably don't need to do it. But I'll say I certainly talk to lots of people, and they go $99, that's nothing, and they spend the money because they can't. Let's be honest, in the world of audio improvements,
right, that's not that much
$99 is pretty cheap. So and if you don't use it and you want to drag the the curtain down so that it doesn't correct over 500 hertz, you can, because for $99 it's I'll call it kind of small change in we'll call it in the audio world for some major improvements. But yeah, I mean, a good pair of speakers, you shouldn't need to spend the $99. But I mean, I'll be honest, I would do it just because I know I can, and I want to have the control if I need it, whether it be in in this system or the next system or whatever. So yeah. Let's see. I was looking for a slide here. I thought I had a direct slide that showed you the custom curves. I'll see if I can find it. So we'll chat a little more. I'll see if I can find my my direct curve slide for you guys. So
here's a quick question: with direct, does it show you the after response? Does it actually show the actual response, not just the target?
Yep. So you see both. So you see the measured response. And they refer, I mean, being, I'll call it scientists, they show you the target response, because they basically aren't going to make promises they can't keep, because there's other things that could come into play. But it does actually show, it actually does show you both, and you can compare. So you can see that, hey, maybe, why is my left speaker, down 3 or 4 dB at this frequency, things like that. So it is definitely in there. Let's see if I can find my slide of the after effect with
yeah, because that's what we were talking about, right, Chana, last time, how a lot of other ones, they'll show you before, they'll show you the target, and then you kind of assume that the target is what's the after, but that's not always the case, right?
Yeah, and because you can, I'll call it, edit the curve. I mean, you can do a lot of that, but unless you remeasure the system after with the correction in there, you won't really know what the result was, which is why they don't show it. It's like, well, if you have I'll call it separate outboard gear with, let's say, a real-time analyzer and everything else, then, you might be able to show that stuff. there. But yeah, that's the target curve. That's what it's going for. And in my experience, it's very, very close to that. We'll call it that that desirable end result. So
Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, if you can get it up and running.
Give me
meantime,
a second here. Yeah, we got some
questions.
time. Let's take some more questions, and I'll dig for my my Dirac slide here. So
cool. So with the smartphone app, was that a Dirac thing, or does the NAD actually have an app for setup?
So there's no NAD setup app. There's the BlueOS app, which is our high res streaming platform that's built into the receiver that gives you, I'll call it input and volume control, is basically what that gives you there. The Dirac app is purely for the Dirac setup. There's I call it an app for the NAD AVRs, but admittedly it's a bit out of date, and they're working on a refresh of that. But it's gotten a little long in the tooth, and I'll be honest, I'm not even sure if the 778 is fully supported in it in there, because it was done quite a number of years ago, and it works on a different platform. I'll say it's so old, it's back in the days when receivers didn't have network jacks in the back of it. Let me just put it that way.
Gotcha. And since the 778 has the BlueOS in there, is that like having like a Node 2i?
Yeah.
Already. So then when I get my 778 in for review, I don't need to connect the Node 2i.
Nope.
Then, right?
Plug in your Ethernet jack, and away you go. It'll show up on the network.
Awesome.
Which is the other nice thing about I'll call it the design, is that, you can, and our BlueOS environment is that, the AVR is part of the multi-room. And so like my setup, I've got it's a preset, which is a function that we have in BlueOS that goes to one of my favorite radio stations and sets the volume. So with one button press, it turns it on, goes to the station, and sets the volume, all with a single button press. So it makes things really fast and makes it easier to use, as well, as opposed to having to turn it on, change the input, and then select what you want to do. So
that's definitely convenient. For sure.
Big time. Yeah. I mean, especially if you've got let's call it like a Harmony remote or whatever, and, we'll call it multiple people in the household all using it. Somebody can grab the remote, hit one button, and it basically the receiver does the macro as opposed to putting it in the remote control instead. And you get 10 per player in BlueOS, but 40 through automation, which is a lot of presets.
Damn. So another good question here, a few people have asked, is do you still need to run REW with Dirac? Room EQ Wizard?
Nope. No, it's basically all built in for you. You just run the process is, you take the receiver, you set it up, you get it on your network, you do all of that stuff. And then, I recommend that you set up the speakers, your sizes, levels, and distances first before doing Dirac. The reason being is that, number one, for the speaker levels, Dirac pulls that from the receiver. So instead of having to fiddle around, especially with a smartphone app, and trying to set levels where it's not as easy to do, you can do it with the receiver more easily. And then the other reason being is that if for some reason you're cycling through and you accidentally turn Dirac off, your receiver won't sound terrible because all your levels and distances are
already
wrong.
Set.
So you've got all that stuff for you. So makes it a little faster and easier to go through, especially on the smartphone app, but also easier on the desktop as well. But yeah, it's also that if you turn it off, then you actually have a decent sounding receiver beforehand. So
right on. That's a good pro tip, guys. Set up all your distances and levels in the 778 before you run Dirac.
Yeah. Yep. And it's just, here we go. Let me just throw up my slide here. We'll just move you guys over here.
So with the 778, is it MQA compatible?
Yes, and that was, I'll call it, not easy to do. There's a kind of a neat story, because the MQA process essentially demands that you don't change the audio in order to meet certification, because that's the point of having MQA, is it's certifying to the original recording. So to do DSP, which at the end of the day, that's what Dirac is a super big fancy, DSP. That we actually had Bob Stewart and one of the head guys from Dirac together in the same room. Is like, you guys fight it out and figure out how to do it. And they came back a half hour later, like, he's a really smart guy and pointed to each other, and they figured it out, and it was done. So you actually can get room correction with with MQA, which, as far as I know, we're the only people that give you that.
Oh, very cool.
So here's the levels distance, and you can see why, with a bunch of different speakers, why you wouldn't want to do that in the smartphone. So the levels you see are already pulled from the receiver. But the slide I wanted to show you was this guy here, which isn't, I'll call it, oops, let me just change this up. I want to show you this slide here. Oh, I think here we go. There's measurement.
There it is.
There you go.
Wow.
So that's the before and after with all channels, and you can highlight and change as well. But the next step is actually filter design. So this is where you actually see there's your NAD target curve here, and I've named it. This is narrow sofa setup. So this is a really tight response on a sofa, and so you see the actual measured response and then the target. And then you can actually flip between the before and after, and so you can do it, channel by channel or group by group, as well as do the before and after, which is really the impulse response, is where the big magic lies. So this is the full 20 to 20 frequency, and this is the curtain you can drag down. So you can see here there's a bit of a high frequency spike here that we're trying to correct for, and we're putting a little more bottom end energy in here and flattening out some of this stuff here. But it's super impressive. But yeah, when you get all the speakers going all at once, there's a lot of stuff there, and you can go through them in this target view. And this is where you'd edit the curve. You basically grab these points. You can add points, subtract points. Basically, do what you wish with it. And then you can actually compare the before and after.
Wow.
So this is where you basically see the measured and the corrected. Here we're just showing the measured, but you could click on the corrected and it'll show you the after. And so it's super, super sophisticated. I like the computer version simply because I'll admit to being a bit of a control freak when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, I would do it on a computer too. Is it Mac and PC, or is it just PC?
Yeah,
okay,
no,
cool.
They got Mac, PC, Android, and iOS. So there's lots of different ways to get it. So not too much of a challenge.
Very good.
And the other nice thing about it too is on the mobile versions, you have to measure every single point, which I think the most measurement points they get to is 19 or 20. Which can take a while. On the PC or desktop, we'll call it computer version, you can skip it. So if you only wanted to do 12 out of 19, you could do 12 and move on. I always recommend doing a minimum of 9. But I've actually heard a demo where it was like we're running out of time, like we just got in the room and they actually did one measurement point and the results were still impressive, because it's that first measurement point that does the timing and phase correction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key one, and that's where you move I'll call it your sweet spot around. So like I said, we were talking about earlier, if you want the best seat in the house to be 3 feet from one speaker and 12 from the other, you can actually do that by making that first measurement point in that your favorite chair position.
I see.
So that's how you do
the
it.
first measurement point at my seat.
Yeah,
it's weighted that way, right?
That's it.
Yeah. But the nice thing being is that, because you have 3 presets, if you want to do, one that's just for me when I'm by myself and I sit in the corner couch, I can. But hey, now the whole family's on the couch and I want a nice big sweet spot. Then you do a second one and you call, one, we'll call it selfish and the other one family or whatever you want to call it. And away you go. So
is that accessible through a remote? Those presets?
3 different ways, either through the remote control. So there's basically a 2-button press to cycle through it, through the on-screen display, or through the front panel. You have 3 different ways to do it, or even the direct. Yeah. Technically, you can fire up the direct app again and cycle through them as well.
And how long does that take to switch over?
Actually switch, yeah.
Half a second.
Oh,
no, it's really
fast.
quick. Yeah. Like
some of them are like what, Joe? Like 20, 30 seconds to like. Switch
I mean, let's just say, for example, another manufacturer's app. If I wanted to switch different presets, I'm talking about like a minute. Because I'd have to resend the profile from my phone,
like Odyssey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, all the profiles
Thank
are
you for the
stored in the
super chat.
receiver, so it might even be less than a half second. We'll call it a brief pause, and it switches over. It's pretty instant. So certainly a lot faster than that. If it's over half a second, I'd be surprised, but I haven't actually measured it. So
That is awesome.
yeah,
That's
I would
great.
use that. Just
Yeah.
messing around with different profiles to see
Mhm.
which one I like.
Joe,
Yep.
you love your night mode.
Yeah.
You gotta have your night mode set up, where everything's just coming out of the surround so that you don't bother anybody sleeping.
But this is this is even more because that one's just
Yeah.
levels. This is actually changing the
Everything.
room calibration profile.
Mhm, correct.
Room
David,
profile.
how many
So
does it allow you?
So three presets plus off. So we'll call
Okay.
it four in total, counting off. So,
Cool.
but I mean, if you want to run just rear channels, there's we've had I'll call it a surround mode. Like that's the other thing. We don't do, I'll call it 101 fake surround profiles.
Right.
The only one that we've had for ages is called Ears ambient audio recovery system. But the one you'd like is called Enhanced Stereo, which is stereo out of all speakers, but you can turn off the speakers you don't want. So you can have just the rear speakers on, not the fronts, and do direct that way as well. So
Nice.
So you give you the ability to run just your surround speakers, so you can keep the volume down for late at night. So
there's a question here: is the app accessible in iOS with the voiceover, which is a screen reader for the blind and visually impaired?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one. I would actually have to look into that one to see if because that's a Dirac app question. We don't have our own app, so I'd have to check with them to see see if it worked.
Where would they email in order to get the answer?
Let me give me 2 seconds here, and I'll tell you. But I think it's support@dirac.com. But I'll just let me confirm that and see. I know our Blue OS one is. But I'm not 100% sure on the Dirac one. So let me just check that one for you.
I'll probably be able to answer this question by Martin.
Sure.
I think it'll match up just fine. I think you'll be A-OK. Would the T778 match up well with Klipsch RP280 and an SBS mix system?
Definitely. Our amplifiers have always had, I'll call it tons of current. So there's pretty much no speaker out there that we can't drive. They're not, we'll call it, known to make difficult to drive speakers. I mean, some companies make speakers that are hard to drive.
Yeah,
they're quite the opposite.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Wouldn't be a problem at all.
85 watts would be plenty.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just looking for Direct Help Desk email. I don't seem to be able to find it, but I know they have one for sure.
They may just have a contact form on their website.
That's all I'm seeing. But I thought they had a direct email contact. As well.
So probably the best thing. Just go there and ask them.
Yeah,
I think the questions about REW earlier were just. I think they wanted a clear answer as to whether it would show you the after response, measured response in room using Dirac. Does it show you?
Yeah. Again, you'll see the measured and the target. The after, you would need to remeasure to see what the corrected was after the fact, and then you would.
Got it.
I mean, at that point, you're kind of measuring your measurement instrument. You'd actually need a second instrument to see if it actually spit out what you were intending it to do. So you'd need to get an RTA or some kind of software similar to see what it do. It is exceptionally good. It will correct, if memory serves correct, it's either 6 or 9 dB up or down from the target response. So it'll drag a lot of stuff that, I'll call it isn't there out. So, and there are sticklers for accuracy. So I would expect your actual results post correction to be as close as you're ever going to get to what the target curve was. So
I'm excited to test it out. Afterwards too.
Exactly.
So
very good.
Work that out with you guys afterwards. We'll see.
Any plans for a pre-pro in the near future with also nice display like the T778?
I can't give away any secrets, but
I can't accept or deny.
Confirm nor
confirm.
deny.
But
right.
I mean, realistically, would you expect us to make a step-up product that didn't use the same display?
At the
entry level, there'd be an argument to not put it in because there's obviously
Sure.
a cost aspect to
Sure.
it. But I mean, I'd say if you looked at our Master Series level of 2-channel products, almost all of them have that display now. So you probably wouldn't be shocked. Let's call it that.
Nice.
There's a question there.
Is Zone 2 separate from the rest on the 778?
It is, but it is a bit of a legacy holdover from the older stuff. So you need to have analog inputs to use Zone 2 outputs on it. So
that's usually that's with everything else that I've come across. Zone 2 is usually coming in from the analog input.
Yeah, it's pretty common. We're I call it trying to work away from that simply because there's not a lot of analog stuff out there. But in the current lineup, no, you're limited to analog sources for Zone 2. So, but it is separate. You have separate volume control and source selection as long as you're analog. So,
I like cruising RSA. If I pick up NAD and throw your name around, would I get a discount? Maybe if you're in the VIP area, then you can ask them over there.
Yeah, I was going to say that some dealers might actually charge you more by telling you that you knew me. So
they're like, "Oh no,
yeah,
he's been talking to David.
Guy,
He's going to be a pain in the butt. Let's charge him $500 more."
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're up on an hour again. We have a VIP area where David will pop in for a little bit. I know you have something to do right after this, but he'll be in there.
30 minutes.
If you don't already have a ticket, you can still get one if you want to access the VIP area.
That's right. You get immediate access. Go to the HiFiSummit.com, click the button that says join us, $29, and you're in
like Flynn, baby.
That's right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the journey to the top will continue at, I believe, 1 o'clock. Is that correct? Yes, 1 o'clock.
Here.
We've got Sonic Presence recording spatial audio. That's going to be awesome. I'm stoked to check that out. And big shout out to David, NAD, and the whole crew at Lenbrook. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been so great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And yes, we'll see